This from Brass Check TV.
Mr. Galloway, I would like to pick you up on 2 points. Firstly, you claim that you do not wish to see the Middle East ruled by tyrants, but you were filmed hugging Saddam Hussein. And secondly, your obsession with not deploying military assets leads to bloodshed. If we had done nothing in Libya, Benghazi would be a bloodbath. Us doing nothing in Syria has led Syria to be a bloodbath. But your obsession with imperialism when people cry out for help surely is wrong. Surely we have to listen to the people who want our help, who need our help for the very freedoms you advocate, instead of branding ourselves imperialism over historical guilt.
George Galloway will now speak.
They obviously heard you better than I did. Perhaps it's my age. I didn't grasp much of that. I heard it punctuated by well-known names and places. So I shall do my best to infer what it was that you were saying. The Gaddafi dictatorship in Libya was a joke. They had 2 million people, an ocean of oil and gas, revenues of trillions of dollars, such that every Libyan person should have been a multi-millionaire, and the public realm in Libya should have looked like Dubai. But anybody who has ever been in Libya knows that that was not true. Now, I've never met Gaddafi or any of his family. I think you might be confusing me with Tony Blair. I've never met Gaddafi or any of his family, and I have nothing whatsoever to do with the former regime in Libya. But I will say this to you: it takes a particular genius to make Libya worse than it was under Gaddafi. And that's what we have now done. If you don't believe me, take a look at the pictures of the black people twisting like strange fruit from the trees in the wind, hanged and lynched by the so-called rebels, revolutionaries now in power in Libya. Or take a look at the US Embassy compound in Benghazi, where Al-Qaeda murdered the American ambassador just a year ago. Or take a look at the fancy hotel in downtown Tripoli, from which at 4 o'clock in the morning, just last week, the Prime Minister of Libya was kidnapped at gunpoint by hundreds of people and had to be rescued by hundreds of other people at gunpoint and taken to one of their houses and interrogated. Take a look at the fact that Libya was once one country and is now God knows how many countries, such that the son of the dictator, Mr. Blair's best friend, Mr. Blair, helped him write his thesis for his PhD from the London School of Economics. Mr. Mandelson was a big pal of his too. Was, I stress. Hasn't done much to help him in his current Calvary. Where is that Calvary? It's in Zintan, in a dungeon, from which they will not release him. Never mind to the International Criminal Court, which demands his presence to face charges of war crimes and crimes against humanity, but will not release him to Tripoli to stand trial in the capital of the country. Insists on torturing him and trying him themselves. They've already cut off 2 of his fingers and knocked out most of his teeth. Libya is a totally non-functioning state. It was pretty bad under Gaddafi. It's now even worse. And how you could stand up in the Oxford Union and pray in aid the success of imperialist intervention in Libya, well, you're not watching the same news bulletins as me. I heard you mention the Iraqi dictatorship, as was. The imperialist intervention in Iraq, I thought, had no sentient being left in the land speaking up for it, but I was wrong. Here in the Oxford Union, if I'm inferring what you said properly, we have one. Well, you're the last man standing that thinks killing 1 million people in Iraq, driving 3 million Iraqis out of their country as refugees, breaking Iraq from one country into dozens of countries, each of them ruled by sectarian militia, the making of Iran, our former, now current, bogeyman of the day, the most powerful element in Iraqi state and political affairs. Anybody who thinks that as a success is a success story is not living in the same land as me. Anybody who thinks that by invading and occupying Iraq, generating extremism amongst that 2 billion Muslims of which I talked, to the extent that it has cascaded everywhere in the world, has multiplied Al-Qaeda and its mindset everywhere. Anybody who thinks that is a success, well, I despair. If you're really an Oxford student and you think that the imperialist invasion and occupation of Iraq is any kind of success story, I really can't imagine how you reach that conclusion. Certainly the parents of the soldiers who were sent there on a pack of lies, this is an important component of the collapse in credibility of our political class.
About 2.5 more minutes to go in this. I repeat, Brass Check TV presented this. Google Brass Check TV. Go there, join up, get some important and valuable information from these good people at brasschecktv.com.
And which my film will deal with in detail. You see, it's not just that the invasion of Iraq was a crime. It's not just that it was a blunder, though crime and blunder it clearly was. It's that it was all done on a pack of lies. A false, fake casus belli was constructed and then exposed in front of the entire world. So there are small tyrants and there are big tyrants. If I may quote from St. Augustine's book, City of God, in which he tells of the encounter on the high seas between Alexander the Great, as he called himself, and a pirate captain. Ordering the pirate ship to halt, Alexander demands of the captain, "How dare you terrorize these waters as a thief?" And the captain answers back, "How dare you terrorize the entire world? You with your great navy can call yourself an emperor and can call other men as you please." That's the world we had then and have now. That Blair and Bush can call other men tyrants, dictators, rogue states, failed states, states that have to be invaded and occupied. I finished the answer to this with how I started. Did you imagine that the Iraqis would respond to the invasion and occupation of their country any differently to how we would have responded if Hitler had invaded and occupied us? If you did, that means you think Iraqis are less than us. I know that that's not true.
That was George Galloway speaking. And again, I repeat, this is a press relay presented to you by D. McClung, Dr. Monologue, found on BreastCheckTV.com. You can check it out yourself. They have quite a few videos, many videos, and most of them are, I would say, accurate, poignant, and relevant to today's world, and should give them a listen. BreastCheckTV.com. Addressing Mr. Galloway's comment, the overwhelming, obvious truth of what he said is present here in his words, and it boggles the mind that anyone in the world today that has any awareness of what's really going on in the world, what has happened in the recent past, and what is going on today. Any human being who does not have some awareness of the atrocities being committed by the United States empire of terrorism is, I would say, living in denial and expressing a total lack of comprehension of reality. If you supported the United States government in this invasion of Iraq, for example, or Afghanistan, or any of the other countries that the United States government, terrorist organization, criminal enterprise have invaded in recent years, or at any time in the past for that matter, because Hawaii used to be, back before 1893, a democratic entity, society, a peaceful, beautiful country, a sovereign country. And it's my knowledge, it's my understanding from what I know about Hawaii before the invasion of their country by the U.S. military and the murder, genocide of the Hawaiian people. If you're aware of this, and perhaps this is the first time you've heard anything about this, a little background, real brief background. Hawaii was an independent, sovereign country. They were peaceful people. They were beautiful people. The life there on the islands was, from what I understand from researching history, it was a beautiful country and a beautiful place and beautiful people. Peaceful. Crime was basically non-existent as far as I can tell. They didn't really serve as a threat to any Americans in America, since Hawaii was not a part of America at the time. And some Christian missionaries / terrorists, tyrants, bullies, and greedy bastards presented a story to the U.S. government in the form of a declaration that the white folk or Americans were in danger there from the Hawaiians, which of course I'm not going to say they were or they weren't. I wasn't there and I don't have any information to point out that there was actually any problem, a danger to Americans living in that foreign sovereign country of Hawaii. I believe there was a queen who was, by all indications, a decent, civilized person. There was democracy there, as far as I can determine. But the missionaries were there, and they wanted to take over the sugarcane crops. They were trying to establish a monopoly on world sugarcane production. And I think there may be some link to them with the Cuban sugarcane crop and other countries in the region that were using sugarcane as a primary source of income and well-being for their citizenry. But the missionaries wanted a monopoly on the sugarcane production. Hawaii had a large sugarcane production. So instead of just going someplace and finding some land that wasn't occupied and starting their own sugarcane plantation, they decided that they wanted to take over Hawaii. So they asked President McKinley, I believe his name was, for some help and send some military down there to basically help them take over the country and murder those people, the indigenous people of Hawaii. And that's what McKinley did. Sent in the Navy, as I recall. Generally the military of the United States to go into that country, wreak havoc, commit terrorist acts against those people, crimes against humanity against the Hawaiian people, the native people of Hawaii. And in 1893, the U.S. military, arm of the United States terrorist organization called the United States government, committed atrocities against those people, murdering them, pretty much creating a genocidal situation. Interesting how white men are always doing that. And thus, as you know, Hawaii is now a state in the Union, the United States Union, and it's my contention that they are not a state because the state was created as a result of Americans living in Hawaii voting to make it a state, to join the Union. And since Hawaii is an independent sovereign country, at the time it was invaded, and for those next almost a decade, well, 1893 to 1960, roughly, I believe, when it became state. After the indigenous people had been destroyed and the country turned into another colony of the United States Empire, and pretty much ruining the country and ruining the people, and the white man took over. Now, people say that's progress and that's the way things go in the evolution of humanity, but they committed a crime. They invaded a foreign country. They murdered people, committed genocide, crimes against humanity. And why? Because these bastard corporationists wanted a monopoly on sugarcane. And so, as Mr. Galloway was speaking about Iraq, pretty much the same, except in modern times it's the oil in Iraq and other resources that the U.S. military, the military complex, and the corporate complex of the terrorist state of the United States wanted, and so they got it. And they wanted to bring another country under colonial rule by the empire, the U.S. empire. Now, you don't have to take my word for this. You can do the research. There's plenty of information on the internet about Hawaii and the criminal invasion of their country and the slaughter of those people. And the fraudulent takeover of the country, the fraudulent statehood of Hawaii. So I personally do not consider Hawaii a state because it's only a state in the eyes of the white men who took it over and ruled it and occupied it and perpetuated the white race on that country, on that land. I think it's an atrocity. I think it's outrageous. I think that even today we should look back and say this was evil, criminal, disgusting behavior on the part of the United States government. And certainly the Christian missionaries, I want to make clear on that, Christian missionaries, greedy bastards. But it's little known, apparently. I'm saying this to you now, and I suspect that you never heard of the invasion of Hawaii in 1893. I doubt seriously if it's even in the history books in American schools. I certainly didn't hear about it in the schools when I went to school, in public school in West Virginia and Ohio. Didn't hear about it until relatively recently. I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, 10 years ago maybe. I had no idea. And now I know. Well, at least now I have a clue. But, another example of the United States empire of terrorist criminal psychopaths destroying the country, turning it into a white man's hell. So I just wanted to let you hear Mr. Galloway and his comments, and add a few comments of my own. As for Iraq, a criminal exercise by the United States terrorist organization and empire, a crime that should warrant George Bush and his gang of criminals, murderers, psychopaths, should be held accountable for that crime of invading Iraq and murdering over 1 million people, causing havoc, creating ISIS, for example. It's just boggles the mind how anybody could just say, "Oh, well, that's cool, that's okay, that's well, the government should have done that." If you support the United States government in invading Iraq, then you are a fool. And I'm saying that quite calmly, quite rationally. You're a fool if you supported George Bush and his criminal acts of aggression against the people of Iraq. And that's putting it mildly, very mildly, because if you support George Bush, even today, I mean, the man deserves to be held accountable. He should be held accountable. He should be tried, convicted, and executed for his crimes against humanity. All of the crimes against humanity. Any one of them would warrant his execution. And the fact that he's still alive, walking around, a free man, in this country, it's like allowing Adolf Hitler to continue to live in Germany after World War II. It's that similar. It's that disgusting. The fact that you, if you are one of those people, I should probably not talk to my audience like that. I should probably suggest to my audience that there are people that still support and defend the actions of George Bush and the military of the United States and other government officials, senators and so on, and the mass media, mainstream media. When we know for a fact that George Bush lied and the American people were duped, as always, them being absolutely, totally gullible fools, did nothing to stop it, did nothing to prevent it, nothing to hold those accountable for that crime. I think most Americans would agree that if Adolf Hitler was in America and he was the president of America and he committed the crimes that he committed in Germany and in Europe, that Americans would be outraged and call for his removal from office and try him for genocide. Imagine that. If Adolf Hitler had been in America at that time, or even now, and I think he is here in the guise of George Bush and his criminal gang, thugs, bullies, tyrants, and psychopaths. I find it hard to believe that Americans would just say, "Oh, sure, just go off to Texas and enjoy yourself. Go ahead and live and just be an example of evil, alive and well in America." I can't imagine people being that gullible, that dumb, that ignorant to think, "Oh, that's okay. We'll just let the bastard go right on living, get away with his crimes against humanity." Can't imagine people with that kind of mindset. But they don't have to imagine it because they exist and they're very obvious. And most people are like idiots. If you're one of them, idiots, then my sympathies to you and shame on you. All right. We could name a lot of countries that the United States military, United States government invaded illegally. Vietnam, for example. Pakistan. Afghanistan. Syria. Other countries. Over the centuries. Many of them in the last century. It's just outrageous. Absolutely outrageous. They did that. They are responsible for the murder of millions of people. And the American people are, yeah, that's cool. No, it's not cool. And if you support that, you're a fool, an idiot. I can't think of enough words to describe how despicable those people were and are, and how their supporters and defenders are. I find it absolutely sickening. So, that was the little talk by George Galloway, compliments of Breast Check TV and D. McClung's Archer Monologues. And I'll leave you on that note. And I suggest to you that you do a little research. Find out the history, the real history of the American Empire and terrorist organization. There's a lot to be said, and I can't say it in this venue because it would take days and days and days of me expressing myself. So, do the research. Don't be lazy. A lot of people are lazy. I say something, they want me to show them the resources, the references. They want me to prove what I say, and I suppose that they have a legitimate right to ask me. But I have given you the resources. You can do the research. I'm not going to do your homework for you. That wouldn't do you any good. It's like, I'm not doing your homework for you. If you have any questions, look it up. Figure it out. Get the information yourself. Come to a logical conclusion. And when I say that, I mean come to a logical conclusion. Don't come to some kind of subjective, emotionally charged lunacy. Actually, do the research. And I like I've said before, don't take my word for it. I'm not asking you or demanding that you take my word for anything. I have my views. I express them. Most of the time, those expressions are absolutely true, accurate, logical. Not just my opinion, by the way. An opinion is a personal, biased view of things, and I'm not expressing an opinion. I'm expressing facts and conclusions and giving you critical, analytic observations of the human condition. And so, all right, I'll leave you with that. Give it some thought, and do yourself a favor. I think doing yourself a favor is sign up to follow me on my radio show, D. McClung's Archer Monologues, on Spreaker.com, and so to speak, live and learn. I'll talk to you later.